The longer you stay silent with your avoidant ex, these are the 5 things that will typically happen. The first is that their confidence in the breakup starts to fade. At first, they feel certain that they made the right decision in pulling away from you and not trying to do whatever they can to try to work on this relationship, but the longer your silent lasts, the more they start to question it. And they start to wonder things like, did they actually make the right decision? And are you actually going to move on? Or is this just an attempt on your end to try to get them to panic and reach out to you and take things seriously to hopefully get them to try to make an attempt to work things out with you? And they will have a tug of war with this questioning and wondering which one of these is really going on. And especially if you go silent the correct way, which is officially going no contact, which means for you to not only just block them from messaging you or calling you, but blocking them on all of your social medias, as well as even maybe changing up your routine to ensure that you won't most likely run into them while you're out and about. And this is something that will intensify this because they don't have direct view into what is going on with you. So they can't look to answer this question directly. So in return, they begin to spiral more and really ramp up this kind of thinking. And they start to lean more towards that this is you officially moving on. And this causes them to start to panic, which segues perfectly into the second thing. And that is they start feeling replaced even if you haven't moved on. Avoidance will read silence when it's over an extended period of time that they're not expecting as emotional distance and not you waiting around. That's why it's important for you to go silent on them for an extended period of time, because they tend to really do have an internal clock system where they know about around the time where you are going to break that silence and try to talk to them. So they're really banking on that to happen so that they don't have to be the one to break silence, because they are typically always trying to avoid something like that happening to not have to feel vulnerable or feel any unwanted emotions. So when you don't do that, this triggers their fear of being forgotten and you essentially doing what is necessary to move on from them. And that's something that they don't want, because deep down, they do want to be in a relationship with you. It's just there's something that you did or said that caused them to push away from you and not allow them to try to work things out with you. But at the end of the day, they need to understand the consequences of doing something like this and not trying to sit down with you and work through this together. The third thing is that regret begins to build quietly. They won't admit it, but your detachment makes them nostalgic. They will start to look back on you guys' relationship and all the good times and different things that you would do in the relationship and how you made them feel seen, heard, and understood, and just really made them feel emotionally safe being with you. And that's something that they cherish because they know that it's not easy to find somebody like that, but their avoidant attachment style makes them believe that they can just find you in somebody else and that they'll be fine if you moved on. And that's why in the relationship, they tend to take you for granted and they don't see how special it is to have a relationship with somebody like you. But it's in this silence that they're really starting to see this, and they're seeing the effect of them not trying to work on this attachment style, which is inevitably causing them to not show up in the relationship and why things haven't been working out. So that filter that they're looking through to make themselves feel that this avoidant attachment style is the right thing to do, and that you are the problem because you're not listening to their needs or you're pushing them too hard or whatever excuse that they're telling themselves to try to justify them being an avoidant and pushing away from you. But essentially that silence is what's going to cause them to start to replay how secure you made them feel and how this relationship was really everything they could want. The fourth thing is that their curiosity turns into anxiety. At first they were curious as to what you were doing and what this whole you going silent really means, and they really weren't bothered, as I mentioned earlier in this video. But that quickly turns into anxiety because you've gone longer than they expect and they don't have direct access to you to try to see what you're thinking anymore. And if you block them on all socials and again make sure that you are trying to avoid any type of contact with them, this causes them to really start to spiral and have anxiety because there's nothing that they can use to try to make themselves feel good, right? And avoidant is always trying to control the narrative and the situation. So they'll look at your social medias and try to see if there's anything new that you're posting. And if there's really nothing going on and you're not posting yourself out with different people, they feel really comfortable that you aren't moving on. But when they don't have that access, they're left to their imagination to wonder what you're doing. And this causes them to to really start to feel the magnitude of losing someone like you, because they can't control what you are doing. And this is something that they could never do, but typically an avoidant is pretty good at manipulating you into believing that they have that control and having you kind of do and behave the way that they want you to over time, because they condition you that way, whether they realize it or not. So your stillness becomes a storm to them, where they are internally going through all of these different emotions that they suppress down at once. And the biggest emotion is anxiety, because they're in fear of potentially losing someone like you altogether. And the fifth and final thing is that they begin to miss the version of themselves you brought out. You represented safety and understanding, and it's with those that allows them to be themselves and not be in fear that you were going to judge them for who they were. Even when there was a lot of things that you would want them to work on and they would bring up, you didn't judge them for that. You accepted them, and you tried to make sure that you could do everything that you possibly could to create an environment where they felt like they could express that part of them. And you essentially did that in hopes that the both of you could work on this avoidant attachment style for good and get them to a place where they're mostly healed from this and can show up in the relationship the way that you know that they can when this attachment style isn't activated. And although there may be some times where it seemed like they were making some progress, typically they don't get to a place where they actually make some significant changes so that you guys can have that healthy relationship, and they just continue this avoidance cycle over and over again. But even with that, there was a part of themselves that was allowed to be expressed because they felt comfortable enough being with you, and they started to see that version of themselves that they could be if they could work through this avoidant attachment style. But they tend to never really commit to that version of themselves, and because you created that safe environment for them, they were able to express that other part of themselves that's detached from this avoidant attachment style. And contrary to beliefs, they actually do want that person to show up in the relationship because that really is who they are. But again, they adopted this avoidant attachment style when they were younger because their caregivers did not meet their emotional needs. So this is something that's very prominent within them and has a real stronghold over them. But with you in the relationship, they were able to feel a glimpse of what that would be like. And they actually did want that version of themselves to show up in the relationship, but they weren't able to inevitably commit to doing this because there's a lot more work that they need to do in processing and healing from this avoidant attachment style before they'll ever really be able to completely move on from this type of attachment, which is why it is probably in both of your best interests to continue to go silent on them and to basically go no contact, because just like you, they need the space away from the relationship to start to really process things and really understand what they need. And what they really need to come to terms with is understanding how this avoidant attachment style is really a hindrance on their relationships. And if they're ever going to have a healthy long-term relationship with someone, they're going to have to do the hard work, which is processing this and working on it with a therapist to really unwind this attachment style and begin to heal from it. And it's going to take some time, commitment, and effort on their part to do this. And it's typically very challenging to do while they're in a relationship with someone because they're distracted by the relationship. But at the end of the day, there's no guarantee that they will actually make an attempt to take action on this and work through it. And that's something that you have to come to terms with, because if you continue to allow them to come back, you may continue to go through this cycle over and over and over again and never really get to a place where this person is actually able to finally break through this attachment style and show up in the relationship the way that you need them to. And that's why when you go silent on them for an extended period of time, it's in your best interest, because that allows you to get the space away from them in the relationship to really understand what you need. And chances are what you need is for you to figure out what you need to do to heal and move on from this relationship. I hope that you found value in today's video. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.